One man is growing old and one man is being told that his land is not his own now. He has no place called home. He must learn to be and grow and find time to feed his soul. When he learns to be alone, he will find that he is whole. Gonna break free tonight. Gonna take these chains, gonna make it through the night.
Well, you're listening to Making Life Brighter Radio, and we are back. We just finished the radio show with Dr. John Harmon, who's here today with us, and he is a stem cell patch specialist, and he is also working with brain healing. And this is so important because neuroscience is up in front and center, and neuroscience is something that we need to take seriously with all the EMFs and the other things that we have going on in the world. So as you know, my passion has been not just banking systems and monetary turnover in the world and all the things that are happening in the world, but rather quantum physics. So Dr. Harmon is very, very much centered in the field of the quantum in his work, in looking at frequencies and how balancing the brain is so vital to our body systems today. And we also have special guest Annie DeCoker, and Annie's here with us. She's been on the radio show a couple of times, and if you want to hear the archives, you can go back to Voice America on the Variety channel, and you'll find Making Life Brighter there. So when you look up Making Life Brighter, you can look at the last few shows, and we have been specializing our focus on stem cell technology, the latest in stem cell technology, as a matter of fact, and we're creating quite a healing team that's pretty extensive across the board. And so Annie and Dr. Harmon are part of that team, and I can say I'm honored to get to be a part of that team now. And so Dr. Harmon, welcome back. Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
So let's kind of jump in where we left off, and people can go back to the archive if they want to hear the previous part, but let's dig deeper into frequency right now. You both were commenting on the patches that you used and all the successes you've had with them. So the stem cells are activating a peptide technically in your body, and that peptide now changes your aging process, correct?
Sort of. The patch actually elevates the peptide. One of the peptides are signaling molecules, and your body has to get a message somewhere because there's no switch to turn on. So our body uses this GHK copper peptide. Number one thing it does, I think, is it resets at 4,200 of our genes. So almost a third of our genes are reset to a younger state. A lot of good things happen. If that were the only thing that happened, that would be huge. But the other thing it does, it reverses the aging of our stem cells, and it signals our body to start making more of our own stem cells. So lots of really, really good things. I actually call them stem cell activation patches because when I first started, I called them stem cell patches, and the person looked at me and she said, well, I don't want to get somebody else's stem cells. Oh, I said, no, they don't have stem cells in them. So I focus on calling them stem cell activation patches, but that term doesn't fully describe the magnitude of what happens, because that's only one thing that the GHK copper peptide does. The other one is, like with Annie, you get a rapid increase in the speed of collagen repair, but also collagen destruction. And people ask, well, why would you want to destroy collagen? Well, collagen in scar tissue is haphazardly laid down collagen fibers, not the stretchy kind. It's like this, and it's not flexible. So the GHK copper peptide breaks those linkages so that things are more flexible, or just get rid of the scar tissue altogether. So like in Annie's brain, they said she had a lot of scar tissue and things. And then when you get rid of that, then the brain can work better.
So this technically could be like, if you're a weightlifter, you're an athlete. If you break down muscle mass on a regular basis, you naturally have lactic acid buildup. and you
Yep.
have some scar tissue depending upon what you do. And so if you wore the patch, and by the way, I have my X39 on me right now. If you wore the patch regularly, what's happening is that you may mitigate some of that creation, or you have the breakdown more quickly so that you get back to, let's say, healthier collagen and more muscle mass. Would that be correct?
That was a very good explanation of that. Yes, that is true. And that has proven out in my life. On scarring.
You're a big skier, right? So
well, I used to be. Set things in motion in 1973, broke my leg, tore the cartilage. I don't ski anymore. I've been there, done that. I could, but there's just that little bit of risk of damaging the artificial knee, and then you have to have it taken out and redone.
Now it's cross-country skiing or snowshoeing.
Exactly. Snowshoeing.
You can go skydiving with Annie.
I'm gonna leave that to Annie. She's really good at it, I hear.
So if we could break down, let's just talk a minute about why X39 is so superior. Let's just run down how this came to be and why it is so important, because I'm seeing change in my clients and people that I find pretty astounding. Some of them don't even realize it yet. They don't even get it, but I can see the trajectory of what's happening. I can feel the shift that's taking place, and the corrections are happening exponentially. Really, it's kind of neat.
Absolutely. The words stem cells is a big buzzword worldwide. People are using stem cells for this and that, and if you can, for about the cost of a cup of coffee a day, even if you don't drink coffee, think Thai tea, or think a smoothie, whatever. So for about that cost per day, compared to a $5,000 injection, there's the monetary cost. You could do 50 months of the patches for the cost of one stem cell injection. Now here's the whole picture about stem cells. A doctor's going to tell you there's a chance these won't work. Well, why is that? Stem cells are attracted to inflammation, like a moth to a light. However, if there's too much inflammation in that knee, the doctor's going to inject the stem cells into, it's like a moth to a flame, and the stem cells die. Now, the doctor can't give you corticosteroids because that will also kill the stem cells. So it is a crapshoot. We're going to roll the dice. We're going to spend $5,000. 6 months later, the doc says, well, it didn't work. Well, it was probably because of the excessive inflammation. Doing increase in your stem cells on a time release basis every day.
With the patch.
Difference with the patch? What difference does it make if I brush my teeth one day? Nothing. What does it make if I do the patch for one day? Probably, if anything, very temporarily. What difference does that make if I work out one day? Not very much. It's things that you do on a daily basis. If you increase your stem cells, your GHK copper peptide, every single day, I'm living it right now. 2.5 years later, I feel younger. I look younger. I went in to get my hair cut yesterday, and one of the barbers in the shop pulled me aside when I was leaving. He said, "Hey, Dr. Harmon, what do I have to do to he said, look like you when I get your age?" He's like 25 years younger, and he looked older than I am. And not that that's so important to me, but it speaks to having more vitality, having more energy. I used to fall asleep in that barber chair that was right next to his chair several years ago. I never do that anymore. It's like I have all this energy. So,
and your hair is more brown, you said.
It turned my hair. I still have some gray. I don't care, but it's much browner than it used to be, and then my skin as well.
Yes.
So that's the activating and elevating your stem cells. Now we have a patch called the Aeon patch. that decreases inflammation. So if you use those in combination, more of your own stem cells will stay alive and viable because you have much decreased inflammation. And as in your work, I'm sure you've told people this, most diseases are caused by a long-term exposure to some kind of inflammation. It's not the parasites, it's what they poop.
Yeah, the ammonia waste and what it creates, and then how the body reacts to that. Absolutely.
And that ammonia, people can have paresthesias. They can have numbness, tingling in their legs, and not even knowing. The doctor says, you got some kind of neuritis, here's a drug. Well, it's caused by parasites. So it's the things that cause the inflammation that cause us to age rapidly, changes our body pH, which changes our energy and our ability to heal. These patches, I never say, and no one should, that we cure, prevent, or I'm not diagnosing, we're not treating any kind of disease. I simply say, these patches help your body take care of business on their own. And the ironic thing is, it's with energy you're already making being reflected back into your body. How beautiful of a concept is that? When I heard that, I said, this is my future. I
did too.
get it.
I get it.
I basically been looking for something like this my entire life that's so simple. It doesn't involve a machine that you have to plug in. It is a simple little Band-Aid like patch that even grandma can remember to do. For years and years, I've had patients come in, they have supplement fatigue. I've been to this practitioner, this practitioner, this practitioner. I have a list of 20 things I have to take during the day. I want to tell you, the patches eliminate a lot of that.
Yes.
So it actually saves them a lot of money in the long run.
That's what I'm seeing. And that was the point. When I landed it on this and said, wait a minute. And the reason that I had heard about it previously, but I hadn't employed it yet. And then all of a sudden one day, it's like, how are we going to move through this next energy wave? How are we going to take on the up-leveling of the energies in the planet and the things that are going to happen next, particularly in my field for the sensitives, for the people that are empathic or highly empathic, or the people that are really chronically weak, because those energy hits can send people over the edge. So how do we keep people in stasis and balance and then build from that? So that was a bit of my motivation, actually. And then taking that in, seeing what can happen, what you just said is happening. The need for correction is not so great, or the duration is not so long. So the patches are taking the brunt of the work. They're creating correction. And then if you need additional corrective herbs or something, it's minimal by comparison of what it would have been, and is what I'm actually seeing over and over again.
And with us as well. If you think about glutathione, the level of glutathione in your cells is directly related to your lifespan. Most people don't even know what glutathione is, because researchers and supplement makers didn't figure out how to get past the acid in your stomach until recently. And now there are companies that make it, but they brag about this liposomal or this nanoparticleized glutathione raises your glutathione level 10%. And the patch raises it on average 300% within 24 hours. And so you have this huge, and people who, if you don't know what glutathione is, imagine it's the protector of the realm. Everything's about winning the battle between oxidative stress and antioxidation. And electrons get stolen out of our tissues, out of the atoms and molecules in our body. It's glutathione, vitamin C, vitamin E, biggies, others too, but they're the ones who put the electrons back. But in addition to that, the glutathione is like the mothership of electrons. Vitamin C and vitamin E can come back to glutathione and get more electrons. So they're not one and done. They just keep going and going and going. So it's a big deal to do that.
It's like the time release of energy over or oxidative stress, essentially, the time release. And the delivery system of the patch is so simple and it's so cool. I mean, just to show people here, here's what it is. This is what I have on. And I have been wearing that religiously. It's saved my bacon in heavy cases of what I'll call heavy lifting of healing. And it's really helped me sustain along the way as well. So, for both you and Annie, this question is for both of you. The glutathione patch now is a supplemental addition. The X39 technically is a master patch that has a little bit of everything in it. So why would you use the other patches in addition to that if that's kind of the master patch? What's the purpose of the extra ones?
Well, the X39 elevates that GHK copper peptide, and there are 6 categories of benefit that we get. It does affect the entire body. But if you think about, let's compare that to supplementation. I can take all the supplements in the world, but if I'm not getting DHA, if I'm not getting the good oils, a lot of other things are not going to work well in my body.
Right.
That may not have been the best analogy, but the X39 elevates your stem cells and has a lot of benefit, but we do need ample supply of glutathione. We do need, and there's some anti-inflammatory effect with the X39, but the AON patch actually turns on the anti-inflammatory pathways.
So if you're working hard with the X39 to turn things around, would you not create a hair of inflammation just by the process of doing that?
That's a very good point. And I compare that to, let's say you bought the best view lot anywhere in your state, but there's a 100-year-old house. You have no intentions of living in it. And it's going to get really dusty and ugly tearing that house out and the foundation, and then building a foundation. So when you increase your stem cells, your body says, let's go to work, man. It's time. We can finally tear this stuff out because we have the means with which to rebuild it. So there's sometimes a little bit of a detox that happens because of all of the waste your body's trying to get rid of. If that happens, take the patch off for a few hours, or only wear it for a few hours at a time and just slow that down. It's not the patch there's nothing wrong with that process. It's your body's ability to detox. And some of us have little genetic weaknesses in our detox pathways. And so we have to go a lot slower. Drink lots of water, make sure you're getting the ample copper. If you have any hiccups in your drainage funnel, your bowels, your kidneys, your gallbladder, liver, spleen, lymphatic, or skin, there are going to be some hiccups. So you'd have to go a little slower. I tell people, if you're in a situation where you need to wear the patch just short amounts of time, just put it on the inside of, like, the back of your collar on a t-shirt or something. Wear it for a couple hours, take that one off, put a different one on. That way you don't have issues with the adhesive anymore. You don't have issues with it not sticking. Any adhesive gets body oils and sweat and hair and stuff, and then it won't stick. Just put it on some clothing and then take it on and off during the day so you can dose yourself and smooth out any of those detox times.
I actually have people, and I see more people that are, coming to me really quite ill. They're having liver tumors, or they're leading up to some kind of precancerous situation, and they know it. So they're coming either with a diagnosis or they're in need of something additional. And one thing I have them do, which seems to be helping in this situation, is having them do some colonic work. And the colonic work, maybe once a week for a few weeks, seems to allow that pathway opening for some, not all, but for some, to really kind of sweep it out, and then it's less heavy lifting on the body to kind of push it out.
Absolutely. We have a guy on our team here in Boise who has a place called Living Waters, and that's what he does for people who have that. So that indicates they do have some hiccups in their drainage funnel. and that you're just facilitating your body's ability to get that out.
Yeah. And so let's jump through the secondary patches. And by the way, for all of you listening, if you'd like to get these patches, you can go to makinglifebrighter.com, and on the main page there, you're going to see the information that I've listed about X39 and LifeWave, and you can go right to that link and you can hit the join button and you can sign up as a customer. If you're in the healing field, you can join on the team if you'd like. And if you'd like more information, you can email me directly at makinglifebrighter@yahoo.com, and we will help you, because this is kind of the way of the future. This is the latest technology in stem cell therapy, period. And so if you were to run down well, let's talk about the other master patch for a minute. Let's jump into X49, then we'll go to the other ones, because X49, people are saying, well, if X39 does it, why do I need X49?
It's a good question. We all asked ourselves that when David Schmidt introduced it. But anytime he's about to introduce something new, about a year and a half or 2 years before, he starts teasing us with little tidbits of information. And what he did with this one, he talked about increasing muscle development. He talked about restoration of bone density loss. He talked about blocking 5G, and he says things like this. It's kind of cute. He says, what if there were a company who had a patch that could do all of those things? It's pretty funny. He has a great sense of humor. And for a guy who's on the level of Einstein and Nikola Tesla, he has a sense of humor, and he also has a business degree. So he's very unique in this way.
He'd have to have a sense of humor with and patience.
He just announced at our convention in Florida, he invented a drone, the motor of which actually cleans the air while it's traveling, can stay up for 90 hours and carry a payload of 260 pounds. You know what his sole motivation was? To deliver medical supplies into disaster areas and areas of conflict. Well, let's get back to that patch. I actually test people in my office to show them how this blocks 5G and other, 4G or whatever. And there's a good way of getting feedback from the body when there are biochemical changes happening in the body. And that is, find a strong muscle, show how strong it is, have them hold their phone up to their chest, have somebody call it. There's not one muscle that they can give any resistance to. I'll even test muscles of gait. Like I'll have them raise one arm and the opposite leg, push on those, and that'll be my guide. So then, it affects their gait, which is our interface with the world and gravity. It affects their gait, which then starts to affect their spine because they're not walking properly. And then I'll put an X49 right on the back of their neck, have that person call that phone again. Know if it's like all of the muscles are rock solid, no matter how hard I push. So that it's not.
That's incredible, really, because that's instant. And
it is instant.
Yeah.
And this is how I show how fast the stem cell activation patch worked, because that's more of a regenerative thing. So I use this to show, I want to show you how fast these work. Let me show you this test. Studies coming out shortly that showed reversal in bone density loss. It actually helped your body increase muscle mass, increase stamina, but here's a biggie. It repairs the inside lining of our cardiovascular system called the intima, the inside lining. It's very beneficial for brain as well.
Okay, so I have a question. Hold on a minute there. I'm gonna just pause you for a second. If it repairs the inside lining, I'm just putting it out there, and you can ask him too. Do you think that it would also lend naturally to chelation without having to go through chelation, and or would it also lend to the release of heavy metals?
I can tell you what David Schmidt would say.
Okay. What would he say?
Don't diagnose, treat, or cure any disease These patches help assist the body in fixing itself. That's what it's like. He always says stuff like that. Because, we have to be really careful. They have FDA clearance as a wellness device, and that's the way he wanted it. Otherwise, you're going to fall under the scrutiny of, the FDA, and, you have to prove with double-blind. We have double-blind randomized studies and trials, but not to cure any disease or disorder. So we can say the things that have been shown in the research, that it does this or this, but we don't mention any type of things like
specifically like chelation order.
But I can tell you, ironically, when I first started doing this, I really dug into the science. And anybody who wants to read any of these, go to the website she told you about and scroll down to the bottom of that homepage where the screen turns black. And there is a link there that says research and science. You click on that, it opens up to a whole new world. That'll keep you busy for a week or two. With all of the studies, the letters from the World Doping Association, USA Doping, because our Olympic swim team in 2004 with Michael Phelps used our energy enhancer patches. It's when they won all those medals. And other countries complained, saying they were doping. And so after the investigation, they were shown there was no doping. So in the 2008 Olympics, over 300 athletes were using the patches. Athletes all over the world are using them as well. So back to, I got a little sidetracked on
X49. We were kind of talking about the.
So the testing that was done, they measured markers that appear in the bloodstream of electrosensitive people when they're exposed to these EMFs. And then they used the X49 and showed how those went down, or they didn't appear. So it's like in my opinion, you're not going to stop 5G. Verizon and all of they all have way too much money. It's a stone rolling downhill. So if you don't protect yourself, you are going to be exposed to that, which will cause health issues eventually.
It will. And I think when I first started investigating 5G and rolling out that real true story with Full Colin Russell - J. Colin Gould, and how his technology got stolen and sold to the Chinese, he was safeguarding that, and it got stolen, and they turned around and took it and hijacked it and used it back at us. I was looking at 5G and the effect on the human body. What I came to understand is that it may impair your ability to absorb water and to hold water in your cellular structure. So that was sort of like, how do we hold more water over time? Because that's really an issue. So if you say that this has been shown to perhaps deflect or not absorb the radiation of sorts, then you have a better opportunity to keep your water intact. And so go ahead and if you wouldn't mind speaking to that a little bit, of what you see the 5G doing to us and how the patch can really assist.
Well, a friend of mine is really involved in that here in Boise, in trying to block it because of all of the effects. There are the health effects are wide range of, when you start affecting the water and the structure of water in your body, then your system starts to break down. Potentially, any organ system can be affected by that. We do know that Wi-Fi affects our pineal gland. I wouldn't be surprised if 5G does as well. It affects
it has to, because I get fuzzy brained when they turn it up. I know it. I mean, literally, people talk to me like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I can't think straight. I feel like I'm underwater in a swimming pool," and I literally have to leave, like go miles away from the area, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoop, I've come up again. I can breathe. I can think straight. So that shouldn't happen. That's not good. Now,
Right.
let me just
And-
ask the silly question really quickly. We're going to have somebody on here that's going to say, well, can I put it on my phone then? Can I put the patch on my phone?
Actually, we did that same test.
Did you?
And it had the same result, because when it's up to your head like this, either side of the patch is just the opposite side of the same substance. I mentioned that I don't even wear them on my skin. I wear them on my clothing because I'm one of 1 in 10,000 who gets a skin irritation. They're hypoallergenic, and most people, it doesn't bother them. But when I first started using them, I go, oh, my skin's getting irritated. Oh, I'm not going to be able to use those. And then David said, just put them on the inside of your clothing. So it's the opposite side of the same substance, whether it's right on your skin or 3 inches away, it's still reflecting back those frequencies. So you have it on your phone, it's going to have the same effect if it's close to your head.
So do you have to change it out every day
It's not
on your phone?
affecting your phone. It's affecting your production of that peptide that blocks it.
Got it. Okay, so you're really speaking about what happens inside your body.
Correct.
This is a stimulating or reflective mechanism of what's happening inside of you. So now let's jump into the other patches. And Annie, you can jump in anytime too. Let's just roll down the patches really quickly. Alavita.
I use Alavita. That was the first extra patch that I used after X39 because people were talking to me about my scars disappearing, and I didn't even realize that they were disappearing until somebody else noticed, because I had big, thick, white scars all over that they could see on my arms and my face. And when they noticed them disappearing, they asked me about Alavita. And I wasn't using it at that time, but I started using it. And then when they brought out the X49, just a couple 7 or 8 months ago, I started using that. And I didn't think I could feel any better, but I have so much more stamina and energy compared to the other people who were practicing in the hot Florida sun, skydiving, and we have to wear a lot of protective clothing. I feel like it's a little superpower. Like I don't have the aches, and I'm not, it's kind of funny because I'm the only girl, and I'm like, you guys need to kind of get with the program here and start flying like a girl, because you got to keep up with me. You can't be whining about being hot and tired and exhausted. It was a lot more of everything good. My mood, feeling really just peaceful and confident and not having any form of anxiety. You just rise above it all. It's hard to describe.
So people that might need leveling out in their mood, this goes back to your work, Dr. Harmon, and what you're doing right now in clinic. It's balancing out those brain waves and balancing out the correction of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, correct?
Correct. And I want to use everything we can to check lots of boxes for people. So if you think about it, we're using frequency to help reset the primitive brain. It's electrical frequencies. We're using frequency from the laser. Wavelengths do different things, and different pulsations of those wavelengths do different things. Briefly, for example, the vagus nerves that exit underneath the skull right in front of the atlas along the SCM muscle, they respond the best to 10 hertz on our laser. 10 pulses per second stimulates the vagus nerve. However, the brainstem, there are 2 diodes. I have one in right here with me, but it's not turned on. It takes a little while to boot up. But for the brainstem, the pulsations on one is 9 and then 20, and the other head is 5,000 and 10,000 times a second. Well, they figured out that's what turns on the mitochondria in your brainstem cells. So it's frequency and pulsations of light. And now these patches, using their energy to power the patch that gets reflected back in, that speaks to my soul of that's the best way to heal things rather than trying to change it chemically.
I'm with you. I love this. Well, it's where we're heading. You know, light and sound is the future. It was the past. Now it's going to be the present. So amen to this, because this is such an easy application and for all. It can be used on animals as well. So let's keep on with our patches. Again, if you want to get the patches, you can go to makinglifebrighter.com, and on the main page there, you're going to see the link that you can click on to get your patches, and you just click join, and then you can buy them retail. You can join as part of the healing team, doesn't matter. So we can help you with that if you have questions. But now, why Aeon, you talked about a little while ago for inflammation. What else is that good for?
The Aeon actually stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system as well. So it helps turn on that resting, digesting, healing, sleep part of your nervous system. So there's that. And then the Aeon also rapidly decreases inflammation.
That's so important. And Annie, do you use that with people? Do you see a difference with that, either with yourself and your healing or with others?
I did notice a big different like expedited healing with a wound that I got recently on my ankle, and I just put the Aeon patch right down there near my ankle, and it was a deep, almost like a little cavernous burn. So it had to heal from the inside, and people were saying that's going to take a couple months. And from the day that it happened to the day I was wearing those giant tall heels at the convention, Dr. Harmon, was 6 weeks. So
6 weeks.
Yeah.
Expedited healing. Yeah.
By the way, if I didn't already, well, when I first saw pictures of Annie, I had no idea that she had ever had any kind of accident or skin or hair problems or anything. And like, you cannot tell one thing about the story she tells. I think she's making it up. Just kidding.
She's a trooper. I literally cried the first show when she told her story of how her body burned and her skin melted off, and just the state she was in. She was basically at death's doorstep, and she's come back from that and is one of the most, here she is competing again in skydiving and showing up very jolly. So let's move on in our patches. Carnosine. What does carnosine work for?
Carnosine is one of the patches that the U.S. Olympic swim team used back in 2004. It's very good for body development, muscle, heart, very good for that. That with the X49, I mean, that really gives bang for your buck. So brain, heart, muscle for carnosine. Very important things that the carnosine does. I use that one every day. Annie was talking about that X49 and her stamina and everything. That's one of the things I've really noticed. And I've worked out my whole life. And at 68, things started to, even maintaining the same workout, it seemed like it just wasn't enough. With the X49, I've actually been able to build more muscle mass.
Nice.
Even at my age. So,
well, that's important because we lose 5 pounds of muscle mass a year after a certain point, and that's no joke when you're trying to keep all the bones in place and still have the same strength level, which also leads to your mobility, your balance, and then ultimately your hearing, your brain function, so on. It's necessary, all of it.
And your basal metabolic rate.
Yeah.
You don't have that muscle mass, you're not burning as many calories, and you're more prone to start putting weight on. So the one that Annie was talking about, the Alavita, it actually elevates a peptide called epithalamin, which is known as the fountain of youth peptide. That's why it's such a beneficial effect on skin and hair. But it also elevates melatonin, and it elevates telomerase, which repairs the endings of our genes that get shorter every time a cell divides.
Ah, that's so important because, okay, let's look at all the EMFs and all the things that have exponentially increased our direction, the radio waves that are going through us now. Ultimately, the probability of your genes getting shorter just by exposure to being alive in this world is greater than it was 100 years ago. So fundamentally, everybody needs that.
Yeah, and then you start to win the battle between cellular death and cells that live on. And David Schmidt said, when you have ample telomerase that repairs the ending, and for those of you who don't know what the telomeres are, think the ending of a shoelace, the little plastic thing. It holds the double helix strand of our genes together. Then they have to separate, and then they have to duplicate, and then each time that happens, we lose a little bit of that ending, and now after a while, you can't hold the genes together, and then it falls apart, and that cell dies. David Schmidt says if you have ample telomerase, your cells can reproduce 30% more. So fewer of your cells are dying that have to be replaced. So your resources can be devoted to just fixing things and reverse aging instead of just anti-aging. So Aloe Vera is a really big one. I use that one. We use that one at night because of the melatonin increase.
That's good to know.
The importance of melatonin is becoming more and more like it's the master antioxidant.
It's also very good for women's uterine health and progesterone levels indirectly. And so it helps to balance out some of those feminine predispositions. It actually, in a roundabout way, happens to help. And I got that from a doctor that I went to that was a great integrative medicine doctor out in LA, and saw how that worked over time. It's great.
I wonder if since I was using that at the same time that I noticed a couple months go by, now it's been 13 months ago that I stopped menstruating. And it's like my monthly friend just stopped coming around. I didn't have any warning or any symptom or any kind of, people talk about hot flashes, or I guess they have issues or problems, or they notice some difference. And I didn't. So far, I haven't noticed anything different except that one thing.
That's great.
I know.
So many people suffer from that, and it makes, their spouses and everyone in between suffer as well. To balance. I mean, we're really talking about balance today. We're talking about frequency and balance. So that's a great point. This is very, very important. Now, let's see what other patches we have. Energy enhancer. Let's try that one.
That one, that's David Schmidt was commissioned by the Navy to come up with a way to keep these Navy SEALs awake in long missions on submarines. They were using amphetamines and they were getting addicted. And so he'd already invented a specialized battery. And so they knew he was really smart. And they said, hey, David, can you come up with a way to naturally increase energy production in these Navy SEALs so they don't get addicted? Well, that was actually his first patch. And what he did is he figured out how to turn on beta oxidation in the mitochondria, which is fat burning. So how can I increase fat burning for energy? It actually causes the body to burn 300 to 600 calories more per day in fat burning for energy. And so the Olympic swim team used that and the carnosine when they won all those Olympic medals. And I use that not every day, but most days. And I between that and the X39 or whatever it is, I don't care. I just use them all because I look at it like this is saving me future money and healthcare costs just by keeping every aspect of my body healthy. So energy enhancer is really good for that. People with chronic fatigue, this is so helpful. That, and then we'll roll right into the ice wave patch.
Yeah.
Chronic fatigue, I have pain, I have no energy. The ice wave patch, my wife and I were furniture shopping a week ago tomorrow night. And I was talking to our salesman about these patches. This other salesman came up and shared his story with me, unsolicited. He told me how he had a fake disc put in years ago. By the way, those are really bad. I had people have those as patients, and they had more pain after the surgery than they did before. Never got back to the pre-surgery pain. So he came in and started describing his experience with the X39 and the ice wave patches. Because you can knock pain out in as little as 10 seconds with ice wave, with proper placement. Yeah, sometimes you have to move them around a little bit. But he said his was so bad that he eventually figured out if he put 3 along his thoracolumbar spine, he had 0 pain. From years of so much pain, he could hardly walk or work. And so that's how effective ice wave is. We have a pain patch for horses, same patch, but it has a little acupressure bead in there to stimulate their hide a little bit more. So it's useful with animals, horses, horses and other types of animals. But the one we use for humans is called ice wave. We have another patch called the SP6. That is placed on the spleen 6 acupuncture point. That's why the name SP6. It's an appetite suppressant for the appetite, but it's also really beneficial in helping the body be the best it can be when someone has endocrine issues.
Yes.
Problems with the glands and other things. Without going into diagnosing or treating, it's just helps your body be the best it can be in the endocrine system. I've actually interviewed people who have had these nasty things that with blood sugar regulation and other things, who have really been able to help their body just take care of business with that patch and with other patches combined. Going through my list, we went through carnosine, X49, X39, energy enhancer, Aeon, and Annie. Can you think of any more? I think we got them.
The Silent Nights.
Silent Night.
Yeah, that's it.
And Nirvana, sorry.
Nirvana, right. Okay. Yeah.
The Silent Night is, and you can jump in anytime, Annie, if you want to explain, but Silent Night is for just that, for sleep. It elevates melatonin. So you can use the Silent Night or the Alavita. I get more effect with the Alavita than I do the Silent Night. But you and I talked about before the trauma that we had in my family with the suicide and murder and stuff, and I had anxiety-induced insomnia. So that's really, really helped with that. Then the Nirvana increases endorphin. So it's really good for anxiety. Sometimes we'll have someone come into my office and they're seeking help with anxiety that's so bad they can't even come in the building. So we'll go out and put a Nirvana patch right here. And
Yeah.
okay, now I can come in.
Right on the pineal.
Yeah, exactly.
Adjusting that.
Mhm.
Right. The science behind this is really, really fascinating. He has done a lot of work in testing the efficacy of this, really. And you are seeing that day in and day out in your practice and what you're doing. And of course, you're using laser and some other modalities, but you're creating sort of a long-term baseline with people using these. And if you could say one thing to sum up what the stem cell activation patches have done and can do, what would that be?
For me personally, or in general?
In general.
In general, well, raising your GHK copper peptide affects many aspects of health and maintenance. And please go to Reverse Aging with GHK. This has nothing to do with the company at all. It's Dr. Lauren Picard's website, and he is the doctor who discovered the GHK. Briefly, what they did is they put old liver cells in a petri dish and put the GHK copper peptide in there. It reversed the aging of the liver cells. And that's what it does for stem cells as well. That's where the whole thing started. Go to his website. You will see those 6 different categories. Potentially all of those things on that website are happening in your body when you put that patch, the X39 on your body. Only one of them is that it increases stem cell production. So there are lots of side benefits that you get from the X39. And then if you're able to stay healthy, then later on in life, you don't need medications, or you don't need to replace a joint because it stayed healthy.
Yeah, that's a really big one, because it's seemingly so many people are today. I mean, think about it. So many people have cancer, and so many people are having joint replacements or ligament deficiencies. And I kind of think that goes back to mineralization and then therefore the degradation of the expediency of that degradation, where this is changing that. You're moving down the pathway of reversal instead of and vitality, right? People are saying they get vitality, a sense of it.
And right along that line, those minerals are really involved in electrical flow.
Right. Frequency again. Here we are.
Right. And then pH. So pH, the higher the pH, the more electrons you have for use. And that's our fuel. People will have, they'll eat terrible their whole life. And everybody listening, just please remember, this is a take-home lesson for just general health. If you're eating out of a box or a bag that's processed, you are eating electron stealers. It's all about winning the battle between losing electrons and keeping electrons. You're eating electron stealers. If you're eating food from nature, you're eating electron donors. And the pH of the cell has a lot to do, everything to do with healing. Your body actually increases the pH in order to heal. And the lower the pH or more acidic, that's where cancers grow. Cancers cannot grow in an alkaline environment. They can only grow in an acidic environment, because that's when you've lost all your electrons and they can't even repair themselves. You don't have enough electrons to do work. That's your fuel. So, I mean, that's kind of a side thing, but these patches all assist in that maintenance of keeping things healthy and alive and viable and vibrant, rather than waiting until something happens and now you got to take some drug or something.
Well,
even if you are taking those, it's not too late to turn it around. That's for sure.
Absolutely. I think that's a valuable point to this, that they can be used on anyone, any age. It's not a contraindication type of thing, and pets and animals. And so, when people don't feel well and oftentimes they have a lot of emotional trauma or baggage, and that can be a whole nother show. But basically the patches are helping the physical, biological, electrical environment. So therefore you're already in a better predisposition toward handling whatever stressors you have emotionally. You might even see the world from a different perspective, and therefore you don't have as much to heal or correct. I think that's something that Annie was speaking to as well, that hey, it's just kind of shifting what's happening. So
I think it is hard to see things from a different perspective when you get stuck in your own little perspective. And I think a lot of people are like me, like I used to be, running around comparing themselves to other people and saying, well, I'm pretty healthy compared to everyone else my age, and I see people now, since I've gone through what I went through, which, by the way, Stevens-Johnson syndrome is caused by a synthetic of any kind, over the counter, it doesn't even matter. One day, those things that seem to be, quote, safe or normal can backfire and kill you. But I would have probably never changed. I would have continued with Burger King and Doritos and donuts and whatever else people say that is fine, because I didn't feel bad. But now when I talk to other people, I see them comparing themselves, not to me. They don't look at the healthy ones. They look at everyone else in their age group and say, well, I'm only taking 10 medications. My friend over here is on 21, so I'm doing good. And I only have aches and pains. I don't also have, surgery or whatever. And they compare, they're not knowing that there's a whole nother level of wellness that they didn't think might be possible. And this is kind of unbelievable when you really sit back and listen. It sounds literally unbelievable. So people get caught in their place and they don't think that there's hope for them, or they don't think that there's something better than just getting another surgery to correct the surgery that needed to correct the side effects from the side. It's just it's a hard place to get out of, I think, when you're in it and all your friends are in it and you compare yourself to everyone and you say, well, at least I don't eat out 5 days a week. I'm only doing this and this and this. So, but if your whole, if you understand the electron stealers and the electron donors and the quality of life that can be had, people say, I don't want to live a long time. Well, they don't know the quality. They don't understand how good you can feel, because it doesn't seem possible. It's hard to describe something to someone if you didn't even know it could be possible, let alone trying to describe how much better they could feel. I've had surgery. I had one bad landing in September of 2016 that resulted in 2 major massive emergency surgeries with 24 hours and a blood transfusion in between. So I have titanium, I have screws and pins, but I don't have aches when it rains or when it gets cloudy. I don't have problem running or competing. I don't even know my hardware is in there. I'd like to get it out somehow someday, but people think once you have this happen, or you break your back or your hips or your femur, that you're going to be debilitated or hurting, or once you have started down the road of, your pancreas is wearing out, or they just assume that they have to jump into that funnel of kind of that mainstream Western medicine sickness care system. And it doesn't have to be so.
Well, I always ask everybody that comes on the show, what makes your life brighter today? Like what's actually made your life brighter? Dr. Harmon.
Oh, I thought that was directed at Annie. My life brighter is vibrant health, full energy. We had grandkids over, my oldest daughter and her kids over for dinner, actually barbecue last Sunday. And not that it's something that I seek, but my grandson Teague plays, he's a senior in high school and he plays on the basketball team. And we were talking and he said, gosh, you don't look your age at all. And all my friends, when they see me with you, they say, is that your grandpa? Because their mom's in her 40s. And he said, you're in the best shape of any older person I know. I don't know.
Annie, how about you? What makes your life brighter?
I think my mood combined with my physical health and strength, and I guess maybe I have a good mood because of my body feeling good, or maybe my body, I don't know which it came first, but I know that I'm different than most people, because it seems like a lot of people in the world are afraid. They're afraid of catching a virus, or they're annoyed at traffic, or they're afraid. I don't know. I feel lucky and super blessed that I am feeling good.
I think you're blessed. I think it's a blessing that we could have both of you here today with us, and we have to wrap up now, but we'd be happy to have you back and continue this conversation. Thank you so much, Dr. Harmon, for all of your wisdom and your sharing of the depth of these patches, and Annie for your insight and your personal experience with these as well is so valuable. Thank you for coming on each time and being with us. And if y'all want to hear the radio shows, you can go back to the archives on Voice America on the Variety channel for Making Life Brighter. So we will continue this conversation again, I hope soon, with more testimonials and case histories and cool stuff that we're encountering with people and their healing journeys. And again, if you'd like to get the patches, you can go to makinglifebrighter.com and you'll see the link there. And we as a team here will help you. And if you have any questions, reach out at makinglifebrighter@yahoo.com. Thank you so much, both of you, and we will have you back here again. Go Jolly, everybody.
One man is growing old and one man is being told that his land is not his own now. He has no place called home. He must learn to be and grow and find time to